All right, our top focus on world DNA. European countries have agreed upon a plan to rearm Europe, endorsing the EU Commission's aim to mobilize about $860 billion for defense spending.
And this comes as Washington has said talks with Kyiv were back on track to secure a ceasefire, but Russia has rejected all temporary ceasefire ideas floated by Ukraine, France and Britain.
Now, EU leaders, they've decided to boost the bloc's defenses at a crisis summit in Brussels and rallied around Ukraine amid the prospect of US disengagement.
Today marks a defining moment for Europe, for security of Europeans. A month ago, we had a strategic brainstorming to guide our common action on defense. And today, we are delivering, and we are moving decisively towards a strong and more sovereign Europe of defense.
Now, France's President Emmanuel Macron called for a defense spending surge and suggested extending France's nuclear deterrent to European partners. Macron said he plans next week to hold a meeting of army chiefs from European countries willing to send troops to Ukraine after any eventual peace deal with Russia.
Meanwhile, President Trump has renewed doubts over his commitment to the NATO alliance, saying countries that are not spending adequately on their militaries do not deserve defense.
Well, I've said that to them. I said, if you're not going to pay, we're not going to defend. I said that 7 years ago. And because of that, they paid hundreds of billions of dollars. I said, if you're not going to pay your bills, we're not going to defend you. And it also went for the attack. But if they got attacked, they said, well, does that mean you won't defend us? I said, are you current or are you delinquent? They said, if we were delinquent, would you? I said, nope, I would not.
Speaking to reporters at the Oval Office, Trump also questioned whether allies, including France, would defend the U.S.
They're friends of mine. But if the United States was in trouble and we called them, we said, we got a problem, France, we got a problem, a couple of others I won't mention. Do you think they're going to come and protect us? They're supposed to. I'm not so sure.
Now, French President Emmanuel Macron said France is a loyal and steadfast ally and the country is entitled to ask for the same from the United States.
We are loyal and faithful allies. Anyone daring to doubt that should simply look at our contemporary history. It fully justifies what we have for the United States of America, what I have for its leaders, respect and friendship. And I think we are entitled to demand the same in return because our history shows that we deserve it.
Furthermore, Ukrainian President Zelensky has scrambled to mend fences with Trump. U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff said he will travel to Saudi Arabia to speak to Ukrainian negotiators about an initial ceasefire with Russia and a framework for a longer agreement.
Ukrainian and U.S. delegations are expected to meet on Tuesday in the Saudi capital. Witkoff said the meeting will take place in Riyadh or Jeddah. Zelensky said he will be visiting Saudi Arabia on Monday to meet Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, following which his team will stay in Saudi Arabia for talks with U.S. officials.
Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump also has planned to visit Saudi Arabia, suggesting a deal for major investment from the kingdom. Trump, however, did not mention the date of his visit. All right, for more on the story, we are now joined by Ron Elido. He is a former U.S. military officer, a former CIA contractor, and former intelligence and operations officer at the Pentagon, and is currently the chief executive officer of Miami Intelligence Agency. He's joining us from Florida. Thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Hello. Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. Now, let me start by asking you, the leaders in our meeting in Brussels, they're talking about they're determined to invest more, faster. They're calling it rearm Europe. But clearly, they are being conscious of U.S. But can they do it without U.S.?
It's very hard. It's extremely hard for Europe to separate themselves from the U.S. because the U.S. have been the cornerstone of the European defense for the last 50, 60 years, ever since NATO and NATO expansion. The European armies, they don't have what we call the logistic depth to sustain a battle for a long time, to move soldiers, to feed soldiers, to sustain the movement of by air, by sea, of equipment or men in great quantity. So they have been relying in the United States for all that logistic depth for the last 40, 50, 60 years. So it's very hard for them to do that. And they might have a plan, but it's going to take many, many, many years, perhaps 10, 15, 20 years before they can replace with their own resources, the resources that the United States have right now in Europe.
Right, Mr. Alito, also the way things have panned out ever since Donald Trump took office, it almost appears right now that it's Russia and United States on one side and it's Ukraine and of course all of Europe on one side. That being said, when it comes to securing a just peace and when it comes to concessions, when it comes to Russia's demand for Ukraine to not have any NATO ties or alliances, how do you think things will play out when it comes to the battlefield?
Well, right now the things are going to get very bad for the Ukrainians in the battlefield because the heavy lifting, as we say, most of the military aid came from the United States, and not only the equipment, but also the contractors, the trainers, the people who teach them how to use this equipment, who were advising them, the advisors, and most important, the intelligence. The United States was supplying Ukraine with real-life intelligence. I mean, from spy planes, from satellites in the space, from all kinds of spy drones. They were providing targeting intelligence, where to attack the Russians, where Russian concentration, command and control positions. And without that intelligence, they are mostly be blind, the Ukrainians. And without the United States support of weapons and experts and advisors, they're going to be handicapped in many, many ways. They're not going to have the same capabilities. Listen, the whole thing is that Trump doesn't have what we call a globalist neocon worldview, a worldview that is white and black. Russia is bad and we are good and we must fight Russia. That is the vision, that is the worldview of Zelensky and the worldview of most European leaders, with the exception of Fico from Slovakia and Orban from Hungary. Fico and Orban, they also have a paleo-conservative, non-neocon, non-globalist worldview, just like Trump. So that is the difference, that Trump sees this conflict as a very complex conflict with many root causes that was from Russia and from NATO expansion, from the coup of February 2014 that promoted U.S. aid and Victoria Nuland. So he understands that this is a very complex situation. It's not a white and black situation, just like Zelensky have been saying for the last 3 years, just like the Biden administration said for the last 3 years, just like the European leaders said for the last 3 years, with the exception of Orban from Hungary and Fico from Slovakia.
Right, and that being said, because you're talking about battlefield now, Steve Witkoff, US's envoy, has said he was going to travel to Saudi Arabia. He will speak to Ukraine negotiators about an initial ceasefire. However, Russia has clearly rejected the ceasefire or the short-term ceasefire. How do you think US will go forward, and what will their plan be? Because Zelensky is trying to get US and trying to mend ties after the fallout. How do you think US will look for the ceasefire when clearly Russia is not agreeing to that?
Well, Russia doesn't want a ceasefire that Ukraine might use for rearm or to get better positions or more weapons. Zelensky doesn't want a ceasefire. He said very clear last Friday in the Oval Office when he was arguing with Trump. He said very clear, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't trust Putin. Putin broke the agreement. I will not do a ceasefire. I don't know. I need guarantees. So Zelensky doesn't want a ceasefire neither. What Trump is now trying to do, he's trying to force Zelensky into the negotiation table. He's cutting the military aid, he's cutting the intelligence, and he's forcing, listen, you have to give concessions. You have to give up land. Forget about Crimea. Crimea is never coming back to you. Forget about being part of NATO. You are never going to be part of NATO. Forget about the Donbass. Forget about the east and south of Ukraine that Russia has occupied. That is gone. You need to accept that. If you try to get all that land back, no concessions at all, listen, we're going to keep putting pressure on you, because then there is going to be war forever. And like Trump said, you are playing with World War III. Those were the literal words that Trump told him in the Oval Office last Friday in the White House. You are playing with World War III. So that's what Trump tries to do. He's trying to force Zelensky into the negotiation table.
Right.
All right, Mr. Lido, thank you so much for joining us on WION World as One with your insights on this. It's been a pleasure to have you on with us.
My pleasure. Thank you.